Our dear viewers of Smart 24 TV, welcome to this program, and we continue with our discussion looking at Uganda's unresolved question of hydroelectricity utilization for economic productivity. We are dealing with energy and its productivity. We may be having gold, but the incense or the visibility of whether the gold has turned you from a poor man to a rich man, you cannot easily see it. And in this kind of analogy, we look at how Uganda has invested much in production of electricity, yet there is still outcry of Ugandans because of the unresolved questions. One, of load shedding. Two, policymakers ask themselves, why are we attempting to buy power from Kenya, yet we are expected and we are believed indeed to have generated adequate power at a tune of 1,378 megawatts. And also, we continue to look at the companies which some Ugandans are not comfortable with. The umeme, when people talk about umeme, immediately someone begins to say, now load shedding has come, and others begin to say, now high tariffs, high billing has come. These are some of the things we'd like you to go through in this discussion. We see how we can turn this opportunity of energy to economic growth and stability of our citizens.
Ugandans, for starters, need to understand the drivers of the tariff. What goes into the tariff? Three things: the cost of generation, the cost of transmission, and the cost of distribution. These are heavy investments. You're putting up Karuma for about $3 billion US. Mm-hmm. Karuma. Mm-hmm. Now, that money, someone has borrowed it from somewhere and it has to go back. They've invested it. So on one hand, you're going to have power available. But for some time, until you fully pay back that loan, you're going to get to buy that power at a certain tariff, because before the money is invested, government gets into, negotiates, and there's an agreement to at what rate the tariff will be purchased. So we have to, on top of that, you invest into a transmission line to transporting the power from the generation point to the point where a distributor will pick it. That is a substation. It's not cheap. Just roughly to give you a cost of those towers you see, one tower, putting it up would be in the excess of 250 million shillings, just one. But how many of them would transport power from Karuma to Kampala, or from Jinja to Kampala, or Kayunga to Kampala? Is a cost. On top of that, you have to invest in the lines that bring the power to your house from a substation, and then the transformers that keep the power stabilized, and the cables. And while we are doing that, we have a new problem. There are people who are in the habit of stealing, vandalizing our infrastructure. We have a problem of vandalism lately. So as you're investing, someone comes and cuts down the poles, cuts the wires, and they steal the transformer, they steal the transformer oil, they take us backwards.
Well, 1 second, and I'm concerned about that, because we've seen load shedding being the order of the day, and at the same time here, as you are about to talk about it, yet we are not here. It's a fact that we have the capacity to export power, and at the same time we hear, and it is a fact, that we import power. We are to import power. So one now we remain in a paradox of then why At a certain point, we are told we have the much more than we can consume, so we can export. Then again, we are to import. Then at a certain time, we are having load shedding. It is remaining a paradox. Ugandans are wondering why.
Let me try to break it down. For starters, the issue of purchasing some power from Kenya was just an emergency, which came earlier this month when we had a small operation error at Isimba. We had an operational challenge there. When a lot of water ran into the powerhouse. During a maintenance exercise, our team was trying to do routine maintenance, and somehow in the process, a lot of water ran into the powerhouse, which led to to the team to do the emergency, the obvious thing. Power and water don't mix, so they had to turn off the facility until the problem of water running into a powerhouse is sorted out. So it had to be dewatered, and it rose up to about 10 meters.
So it was an emergency.
It was just an emergency, and it was resolved as we speak. Okay. The facility was dewatered, and all the precautions were put in place again, and the units that had been switched off have been switched on again. Okay. So as we speak, we are not buying power from Kenya. Okay. We bought power for a few days, about 10 days, as we were sorting out our small issue at Isimba and making sure, assessing the damages. Of course, a few things got damaged in the process. Some automatic systems got damaged by water, but at least the manual system is still functional, so we have power again. Uganda and Kenya have had a power purchase agreement. We have a line running to Kenya. That line can take power and also bring power. We've had it for so many years, since the 60s, the 1960s, because Kenya knew that we had a bit of excess power. Kenya is a bit ahead of us in terms of industries, and some of them operate at night. So originally, Kenya sought to utilize the power at night. When we go to sleep, they said we have our people who can utilize it while your people are sleeping.
So here we sleep so much.
So we are just getting out of there. The president has spent so many years trying to tell Uganda, muzukuke. And I think Ugandans are just starting to, to get to serious work, because we didn't have many industries, these heavy consumers of power. So you had the power that you could not consume whole. But why did we buy power when we have excess power? That is the question that everyone has been asking. Because I told you already that at peak, including Kenya, including what we export to Kenya, we can only consume up to 900, including what we export. So still you have a lot of a balance that you, So what happens, because some of the infrastructure is old, some of the generators have been there for some time, we utilize that time, because the Uganda Electricity Transmission Company will know how much we would require each day or each in a given period, because it has information about the demands from everywhere.
Apart from that, yes.
I wanted to say that whenever you ETC or communicate to the generators that in this week, this is what we are going to require, or this month, this is our projection, the companies utilize that time to do maintenance. At the time when Isimba went off, we were doing some routine maintenance. Isimba itself, one unit was under routine maintenance. Bujagali, the same. And the older dam, the same. We use that time to check these units, check them up, make sure everything is okay, maybe replace some cables here and there, replace some part here and there, to make sure, to ensure that the time you need to generate all the power, when you have people to use that power, the machine should be up and running the way they should run. So there is no point turning on all equipment when you know that your peak uptake is 900 megawatts. So it's no point. It's like you buying a Ferrari, and then you're driving inside the city here. You know there is traffic jam. Maybe you're on a road where you know potholes are so many. You're not going to drive it at 200 kilometers per hour. So knowing where you're operating, you determine what you in this case, what you generate. So we only generate and then use that time to make sure that our facilities are properly serviced and as they await demand. And we are doing everything to drive demand. Locally, our connectivity is at 19% for what we call on-grid, or people connected to the national.
You mean you have increased from the lowest?
Yes. We've been running a number of programs to drive connectivity. So access is at 19%. Ugandans have 57% of Ugandans have access to some sort of energy. We have other renewable energy sources, solar and other sources, but wind and so on. But on the
investing in energy and also nuclear. I mean nuclear and solar. I'm going to energy.
Yes, we have a department in charge of renewable energy at the ministry. It focuses on developing energy from other sources, renewable sources.
So far, visibly, what is in place?
So as we speak,
the capacity.
As we speak, the utilization of renewable energy is actually ahead of what we are generating. Yes, because the other one is at 57%.
That is
generally. Altogether is 57.
That is solar energy, or that's
solar and other
nuclear?
Not yet. Nuclear is something we are working on, and we are hoping to realize by after 2030. After 2030, there are processes. We've identified an area where we can set up a nuclear power generation plant in Uyende district. We are going to start a process of acquiring land for the project in 2024, and that program will go on for 3 years. After that, we are going to start the planning to set up the facility, identifying a company, a firm we are going to work with. But there are quite a number of processes involved with the International Atomic Energy Council. So you don't just decide that I want to do a nuclear power plant and you do it the following year. There are so many things just to ensure that adequate safety measures are in place by the country, and monitoring that agency I'm talking about should be able to follow everything as you implement it here. So that is what we are working on. But in terms of the other factors that led us to get a bit of power from Kenya, apart from the routine maintenance, our transmission lines are not evacuating all the power we generate. In some areas.
Is this the cause of the load shedding? The question of load shedding is worrying. And also, as you come on to get it together, there are some key sectors and institutions which many believe should have been given the priority in whatever terms required to be maybe granted to them, so that they access this power for the sake of the major general community. One, health centers, then you talk about schools, and to some extent also churches, and of course those are some of the social area related. Also there are those who desire access to enable them to do the innovation, which is one of your agenda, these industrial cottages. But yet the vision to achieve the universal access is still limited, much as we appreciate for part of the progress.
We are trying to do, I talked about build reliability. The infrastructure that is currently serving the country, it is largely old. So there are lots of replacements happening. According to our, strategically, for instance, in the urban areas, we want to take power off the overhead conductors and put it underground, because the other system is out of fashion. And
let me ask you, sir, who planned for that? I went to Kigali, and this country were ahead of them in terms of our size and even our economic resource. But from the onset, that's what they did. Why was there poor planning in that regard? Was there any other calculation that was in the mind of those who planned for that?
Previously, I think the time we got power, electricity in Uganda in the 50s, the infrastructure had not fully developed, and Uganda was still a poor country. Now, doing underground cabling, even you at your home, if you try it, just to get power from a pole, and you run an underground cable to your house, the cost is going to be about 3 times the cost of doing the normal solid connection to your house. The other system is more expensive, more costly, so you have to plan carefully for it. You need to have the resources to do it. Previously, even accessing material was, we were importing almost everything. So when you're importing, you're getting everything from very far. You can start by importing what you can afford. But eventually, as we put the resources together and as we develop our plans and we have the goodwill and from the political class, then we should be able to do this. Right now, you asked me about health centers and so on.
Access, universal access.
Yes. You have, for instance, a Chirudu hospital and Kawempe. They were built in a community which is, highly populated. So you have old power lines running through there, and it is the same line serving the community, also serving the hospital. So these facilities get overwhelmed, the transformers and so on. And whenever they get overwhelmed, they can trip. Anything can happen whenever there is an overload. When the usual problems, when a transformer can't hold the load, then it goes off. So when you get a facility such as Kirudu in an area, then you have to plan to, get resources to run a dedicated line from a substation to the hospital, which is not shared. So that the hospital, even as the other places run into their common problems of maybe vandalism.
One second, don't you think that's an opportunity cost? Because you are having now the clients, you have clients who are ready to consume, and that they consume, in most cases, of course, it's not free consumption, they do pay. So if where there is such a kind of projection that there will be an overload, I think it should be in your planning agenda to ensure that communities which are heavily populated, they are deliberately planned for, the budget is footed to ensure that they can access much and we don't remain now paying, so that we don't continue to remain paying for a loan of electricity, construction of these power dams and so forth, yet the consumption is low. Don't you think that's an opportunity?
Dr. Tendewa, you're going to agree with me that there is so much you may want to do as a country, but sometimes you're going to move at the speed of the resources available to you, because the country is not investing only in the energy sector. The country is investing in roads, hospitals, schools, the security, and so on, healthcare. So you have that one cake, and when you start slicing it, what falls into the basket of the energy sector is what we are going to plan with to enhance generation, enhance transmission, and enhance distribution. Now that connecting your Chirudu hospital is a distribution matter. But if you look at the plan, there are so many lines, so many resource requirements to set up, to finalize transmission projects. We have a transmission project to Tanzania, transmission project to Rwanda, another one to DRC, another one to South Sudan. And then we have transmission projects from within the country that are incomplete, and they are not complete because you don't have the resources yet to complete them. There are even others that have not been embarked on because you have to phase your investments according to the resources you have. Similarly, you have lines. For instance, we had the rural electrification program, which was largely set up to drive connectivity.
Do you think the issue is resources? I will be crossing some boundaries which you will not mind, which may not be yours, but for critical review, for purpose of the viewers and the listeners, and where we can maybe project how it could be handled better. We are going through that. This is an analytical program, a critical analysis. And the resources we are talking about, Ugandans are informed as we get information we share with them. When of recent was realized through the report given by the Minister of Finance that we had over 26 trillion, which has for some time not been utilized, and yet it's loans. And as you said, yes, all that amount of money may be for apportioned for different areas which also are demanding. But to us, back to what I know has been the agitation and the conviction of the president in part of the investment, at least telling us about electricity, we must generate power, we have industries, then from industries we get jobs. It's a good agenda when you hear it being read. But now to the reality, to put it on the ground, it leaves gaps. In the process of how you utilize electricity, for us who are saying, please, gentlemen, ladies, go on, help us, mutuyambe, tulibubi, help us, we need jobs, we need to access power. We seem not to be having proper information in regard to a strategic planning on how to bridge that gap. The gap of access, the gap of sufficient, adequate funding of the electricity, the energy sector, so that it can translate from now the borrowed loans into productivity. How could we view it as I just give you my commentary? One, if we are aware that apart from the social services, we are talking about health and education, but by the time we invest into energy, we are already aware we have maybe over 42 kind of minerals which need to be to handle their mining, and of which even we can know the generating cost is this, and so forth. How are we going to bridge this gap relating with the strategic planning and implementation? especially in the energy sector, which feeds into by the other sectors?
Well, like you said, yeah, we need to come out aggressively and create awareness about the policy, energy policy, and the strategic objectives of the ministry and government. Where exactly are we focusing? What exactly are we doing at a given time, so that the public, an ordinary Ugandan, should be able to follow through. A policymaker should be able to follow. And, the technocrats should be on the same page. They should also be in position to operate as if they are not, somewhere alone. Most times our technical people don't want to pay.
I will be coming to you. That package, please reserve it. You'll give it to us in the second session. We are, first of all, I think either you'll agree with me, either on one page. Number one, Uganda, it's not that we don't have resources. The allocation, the strategic allocation of these resources to productive areas, productive sector, in my commentary, I have to say this, is what is lacking. And I think if you could realize it faster and do so, then allocate resources where production can go again, what you call return of investment. This couldn't be a problem. Stay tuned. We have a good discussion. We can turn around our fortunes as a country to improve on our economic growth and progress.